Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
Chad Franzen here, co-host of the Top Business Leaders Show, where we feature CEOs, entrepreneurs, and top leaders in the business world. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. We help B2B businesses reach their dream relationships and connect with more clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships, and get ROI through done-for-you podcasts. If you have a B2B business and want to build great relationships, there's no better way to do it than to profile the people and companies you admire most on your podcast. To learn more, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. Joe Rare is an underground serial entrepreneur, investor, outsourcing expert, father, and husband. He currently owns 4 digital companies, 5 wedding venues, and real estate investment properties. Joe focuses on helping small to medium-sized businesses around the world while working from the comfort of his home in Montana and enjoying big sky country with his family. He's an investor and looks to find projects that he can use his marketing leverage to impact growth and profitability. All of his companies are being fully run by his virtual assistants. Joe, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, so what do you mean by underground serial entrepreneur?
So, yeah, I know somebody called me that a while back, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty fitting. A lot of people are building things, and they're involved in businesses. They're a little more outspoken and so forth. And I don't like social media. I only have my team run it, and they use it, and they put up content. And mainly, it's coming from podcasts and so forth. But social media and just kind of all that stuff isn't like really where I want to spend my time. I could not remember to take a photo of something or make a video of something and post it if you paid me to do it. And so what I prefer to do is just build businesses in silence. And I just want to focus on the things that are interesting to me, that provide value for my clients and my team and my family. And I don't get involved in so much of the, personal brand building, which it could be to a detriment. I don't know. It's working fine for me now. But yeah, so I kind of do things under the radar. I'm not some loud voice that everybody knows, which, again, could be to my detriment, but we'll keep playing it until the wheels fall off. But yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the underground side, is that I just do things under the radar. We're always investing in things. We're always starting something new. We've got kind of what I call secret projects that we're working on. We just launched one of them now that has become super successful. So that 4 digital companies is now actually 6, which is kind of crazy. And so some of that stuff, nobody has a clue it's even happening or that we're working on it. And then boom, we launch it and we're off to the races.
So obviously, entrepreneurship is in your blood. Can you remember the first time in your life when you launched something?
Oh, I mean, we used to try to sell stuff all the time, whether it be, I want to mow somebody's lawn, and, we would find, random things in junky properties and try to sell them to antique collectors and so forth. We did that when we were kids. I know my sisters had me setting up lemonade stands a little bit as well. So all the way back then, for sure. But I really, really recognized it in high school when, I couldn't quite figure out why anybody would go to work for somebody else. And, like kind of a quick story I always tell is like, there was a father of a friend of mine who he was kind of known in town. He was like and I grew up in a small farm town. And so he was known as being one of the wealthiest guys in town. And but you don't really recognize like why. But what was interesting was that he was always able to take us to like a baseball game in the middle of the week, when parents are working. And I'm like, how is this guy able to do that? And then, as I got older and I get into high school and I'm really starting to recognize more of these traits, I realized like, well, because he owns the biggest business in town and he's the owner and he doesn't have to abide by the rules of workers. And I realized I'm like, I want that, and that was kind of like where I think it really for me started. And then, at the end of high school, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I said, okay, no matter what happens in my life, entrepreneurship is how I'm going to go.
So have you ever had a job?
Yes. So I've dabbled in some jobs. During college, I served tables. I think, working in customer service and the service industry is really, really valuable. Um, I also took a sales job to learn sales. And so that kind of sucked. It didn't last very long before I jumped ship. But other than that, I've always been building my own thing. And even when I had a sales job, I was still running my own stuff.
But so you said you didn't like the sales job that you took, but I know you enjoy sales. In fact, I've read that it's your passion.
Yeah. So, the sales job, again, you're locked by parameters. And the hard part is when you're an entrepreneur, you always look at it and you go, you do know I could do this for myself and make way more money, right? And so I wanted the skills and I wanted to learn, but it was really, really difficult to continue. And so to be honest, I don't even think I lasted 3 months. And it was always like, why am I selling for somebody else? Yes, I want this experience. I need to understand how this company works and all this, but it was like, this is just devastating to me. And so that was it.
What do you enjoy most about sales?
Oh man, I think it's uncovering the truth. Within, in the sales process, there's so much hidden truth in the dialogue, in the ability to uncover what it is that is the challenge with getting them to move forward. I also like the idea of of the creation of it. So in a conversation, you can be free flowing and so forth. You've got tactics and strategies, but they're always going to throw something at you that you don't know is coming and you have to be able to react to it. And so how can you create an outcome when it's very improv? And for some reason, I really, really like that. I don't know if it's the challenge side of it. I don't know, but I really like the idea of creating something out of the improv of, okay, well, what's coming? And I catch myself, and I mean, I don't do much sales anymore. My team does, but I would rehearse every potential scenario of an objection, of a comment. I would rehearse it as I'm driving. It's like, okay, if I say this, they say that. If they say this, I say that. And I would do that 1,000 times over. So I felt like even before I knew everything everybody would say, I'd probably touched on it somewhere and had it in my bag. And so I don't know. I really like that kind of stuff.
Wow, that's amazing. So do you like is your closing, given the fact that you're so well versed at overcoming objections and rejections and things like that, is your closing rate pretty high, or do you still is it still like, you hear like, if you can sell 1 out of every 20, you're good?
Oh, no. If we're not closing over 50%, or me personally, if I'm not closing 50-60% of everybody I'm on a call with, I've done something wrong in the due diligence side of things, qualifying and making sure that they're the right fit. The question at that point should come down to, can I make this a no-brainer for them, right? Can I create enough intrinsic value for them that this feels like a no-brainer? And I love the no-brainer comment, and I use it all the time. And it's like, if this doesn't feel like a no-brainer to you, we should not move forward. And I'm okay pulling it off the table. And then the funny thing is when you reverse that and you're willing to take it away, people want it a little bit more. But no, I mean, I'm not a 1 in 20 type of guy. I don't want to have 20 conversations to close one deal. When we get to that point, if I'm going to be on a sales call, it needs to be, okay, I'll have 2 and we got a new client. It has to be somewhere around that ratio. Otherwise, we're doing something wrong in the vetting process.
Let's get into some of the things you have going on. I know you are the owner and CEO of Level 9 Virtual. Tell me about what you guys do there.
So that's a virtual assistant services company. And so, it essentially, I got into it originally because I started hiring virtual assistants as cost leverage. I didn't have any money and I was trying to build a business. And so having somebody overseas do the work for less was a great option. And at one point down the line, one of my VAs came and said, hey, you keep telling people like how to go get a VA, but you should just provide the service because you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And I was like, okay. So we kind of discussed it, and I said, look, I don't want to run the company though. So my VAs ran the company, and it kind of made sense because they had the relationships in the Philippines. They could work with, that team over there, and and so we started offering the service to existing clients, in one of my businesses. And that kind of just grew a little bit. It wasn't until I had a business fail, I had a marketing agency. And when we closed down that business, I relaunched kind of using a more niche focused strategy. And we grew that business really, really fast. And then I realized, like, hold on a second here. I can do the same thing that we just did there. I could do it in the virtual assistant company. And then that company exploded. And then I said, hold on, we could do this with any business if I just put this in place. And so now we have 6.
So you kind of launched that as part of providing services to a client that already existed through another business that you had.
Yeah. Yeah. And I said, oh, look, like here, this is how we can support you better. We're running this for you, but you need help over here. Just hire a virtual assistant and here we'll help you. And that's how it kind of started.
So what did growth look like then?
Oh, back then it was stagnant. It was like, if I didn't have the client first, there was no new client. We did no marketing. We did no advertising. We didn't tell people we did it other than our existing clients. And here and there you'd get a referral. But other than that, I mean, we never even talked about it. It was kind of like on the back end over here, and we had somebody kind of managing it. And then I realized that, well, you can't grow that if you don't actually put effort towards it. And so when I relaunched my agency and I decided to go one niche, one service, for that niche, and we went from 0 to $109,000 a month in 4 months. And then we doubled it in the next 4 months. I said, hold on a second here. Why are we not doing that with a virtual assistant company? Like, this makes perfect sense. And so we were able to scale that one unbelievably fast.
And then another business you have is called a wedding booking system. Tell me about that.
That's the marketing agency in the wedding space. And so we do marketing services and sales services for wedding venues specifically. Mm-hmm. And that was what we relaunched. So I had an agency that was local. We had employees all over a building. We had a big old office and glass walls and doors and all that stuff. It came crashing down when we had about 40% of all of the revenue of the company tied up in 2 clients. Both of those clients canceled like in the same 10-day, 14-day window. The whole company was like, wait a second here. Now we're losing money and we're in the red. And that continued. And, of course, as the optimistic, business owner, I'm like, all we got to do is just replace that revenue, right? We'll get it. But you get into those ebbs and flows where it's you gain a client, you lose a client, you gain 2 clients, you lose one. And like, you could never get over that hump. So I took on a ton of debt to just maintain the business and keep salaries paid and so forth. And then finally it's just like, okay, this doesn't work. We have to close it down. So a mentor gave me a great piece of advice and said, hey, if you were to think about your clients, out of all of them, if they were to call you on a Sunday afternoon when you're hanging with your kids, who would you pick up the phone for? And I was like, there's like one. And it happened to be a wedding venue owner he was a friend of mine. So that kind of helped. But it was like, because I know that he wouldn't be calling with a fire. He would be calling for something positive. And so he said, that's who you should service. And I was like, the wedding industry? Like, that sucks. Like, it's not my thing. But I said, all right, let's go all in on the wedding industry. So that was our one niche, one service. We created one service package, and that was that. And, we launched that and we were able to scale really, really quick. And that's what created my business model that we've used over and over.
What about the Engaged app?
So that's a SaaS. Yeah. So that's a SaaS product that we actually use for the wedding industry. Okay. So it took, hey, this is the product that we're using on the back end to run the system. And I said, well, why don't we just sell this to the industry? And so then we put that forward and just sold it to the industry. So venues, photographers, DJs, everybody uses it.
And there's one more, Campground Digital. Tell me about that one.
Yeah. So that's the smallest of them all. And that has been still running off of like some ghetto landing page. But we, during COVID, we were traveling a lot and, in our camping, towing our trailer and cruising around. And that was when we were actually looking at where we wanted to live next before we moved to Montana. And we were driving around and, we'd be looking for places to camp and where we're going to go. And unless you went to like a big KOA or a, 1,000 Trails or one of the big companies, if you looked at all the independent campgrounds and RV parks, their marketing was awful. The ability, unless you called them and you were able to get them on the phone, but if they were out like fixing something, they didn't answer the call. And so I'm like, there's an opportunity here. This is kind of interesting. And so it was just as simple as, hey, how about we help you with your website, right? Or integrating, these third-party tools or offering text messaging to your, from your website, so that somebody could send a text, you guys could text them back in real time using a marketing tool. And so that's how it kind of started. And so I'm like, well, let's just call a bunch of these. Hey, I was trying to stay the night, at you guys, but like your website, I couldn't figure out if it was okay for my dogs or my kids or everything else. Like, hey, would you mind having a conversation about, us helping you with your marketing? And I literally had somebody build a landing page, create a logo, and let's just test it out. And we got to over, I think it was 4 or 5 months, we just got to $70,000 a month in revenue just by doing that. And and it was more like, hey, okay, let's just pick this region. Everybody who's got a crappy website, everything else is going to be probably pretty bad too. And so we would just bang, bang, bang and call all of them and build that business.
What kind of a mentality do you have to have? I'm sure a lot of people have ideas, but they just, I don't know, I can't figure out how to do this, so I just forget about it. You seem to have, like an idea about you can't find a campsite, so you start your own thing. What kind of a mentality do you have to be willing and able to start these kinds of different things?
Well, the mentality is just curiosity to start. And then it's, okay, I actually think that I have a solution that could work. And then from that, if I feel like I have a solution that could be valuable to somebody, then I go ask them if they'll give me money for that, right? If I could do this for you, would you pay me for it? Yes. Okay, great. Give me money and I will do it now. And if we can do that enough times, that's how you end up creating that's how you create the business. So I believe in putting out and trying. I mean, the worst case scenario, you go, okay, look, like I talked to 30 people, 0 of them want this. Maybe I'm either not communicating effectively, it's not the right offer, or nobody freaking wants it, right? And maybe there's just not the need that I believe that there is, or they don't care enough and they've got enough business and they're good, then that's fine. I mean, it's, unless somebody's experiencing some pain, it's pretty tough to convince them that this non-pain issue needs to be solved. And so, I'm looking for pain points, and I don't know. I just believe like if it fits in my wheelhouse and I have a team that can execute it, we might as well ask them and then try it.
Have you ever, I guess, like the campground digital business that kind of started as you already had other businesses going, and Engaged app that started as a result of your wedding booking system. Have you ever been in a position where you're planning a business and you're putting pressure on that business, like this is now my job, like I need this to support me? Or is it have they all just kind of developed one thing out of another thing out of another thing? You know what I mean?
I think if you go into an opportunity and you think this needs to support me, you're screwed. I truly believe that. If you're putting, well, I say that, but in the beginning, when I relaunched my agency, that was our income. We had nothing else. And so that was important to actually execute on that. But I also understood what it was going to take to get us to the point. Okay, so how long can we struggle and then be able to go, okay, all we need to do is execute this and then we'll succeed. Something that has been very interesting lately is I keep seeing, I saw a video of it first, then I saw somebody post about it, and it's talking about, goals, setting goals, right? Leading indicators versus lagging indicators. And it's something I think that I've naturally done, and I didn't realize it was like actually a thing. But leading indicators are things like, okay, all we have to do is literally make 100 calls a day. We need to, 100 outreach or whatever that is. We need to spend $100 on ads or whatever, those kinds of things, whatever the activity is. If we just do those things, end of story. The lagging indicator, which is the goal, which is like 100 grand a month, you will hit that, period. It doesn't matter. So I keep going to my team and I'm like, you guys, stop talking about the end goal. The only thing we need to worry about is if you do these things every single day, you execute these, you will absolutely succeed. Period. End of story. There is no way around it. You cannot do the activity without producing the outcome. It's just going to happen. So that's been very, very helpful. But I think, when it comes to like, can you afford to do something? I have to make this work. That's coming from a completely different mindset. And I think you're in big trouble if you're doing that and you're thinking, I have to. No, this is going to. I think there's a huge difference in that belief system. We just launched this new business, visitormatch.com, which is a company that essentially all of the anonymous visitors that hit your website, right? It's data, right? They hit your website, we'll get you the contact information of 40 to 70% of those visitors. And we'll send that to you and you can do whatever you want with it. Cold call, email, build custom audiences for ads, all of those things. I came to this and I go, if it fails, who cares? Right. But before we put up a website, before we had a name, before anything else, we had customers paying us money. So I didn't go into this thing, this thing has to make money. It already made money. Then we said, okay, now it's a thing. Let's build it.
So if you can start a business that's kind of already a business and then it just turns into an official business, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, you got to go out and you got to test it. You got to fail. Campground Digital didn't have a name until I was like, okay, we need a landing page. Okay, we kind of need something. Well, what URL are you going to put it on? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's keep looking. And it was just kind of like, okay, the name is going to be Campground Digital. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And that was as difficult as it was to create a brand around that. And same thing with Visitor Match. It's like, well, what are we doing? We're matching the visitors to profiles. So it's matching visitors. And I'm like, so how do you say that in a domain? And then there's the name. That's how we did it.
So given that, our failure, I know you talked about one failure that you had, and it sounded like it was kind of a big deal. Have you had other failures, and are those a big deal, or is it just, we tried it and didn't
I've
work?
had more failures than most people, I am sure. I have no doubt. I have lost everything multiple times. I have, I have failed big time real estate investments that cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars, businesses that have lost me millions. I have had major failures. Are they a big deal? Of course, but it's a failure. And so there has to be something in there that you draw from it. Otherwise you wasted that opportunity. You wasted that. Every failure has something that you're supposed to learn. It's a learning point. And so with my team, I try to say the same thing. Look, go do everything that you're doing. Go make mistakes. Now, don't go make the same mistake a bunch of times in a row, because that's stupid, right? Learn the lesson, take the lesson and get better and improve. And I think that we do that over and over. And even a loss of $1 million on a business deal, something came out of that later down the road, we that could be one of the reasons like we hit a home run with this already. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I've already failed in this build and in this strategy. I've already failed, but now we figured out how to, we don't even get to the point of building anything until we know it's something real. And so, that could be lessons learned from failing.
Sure. I was going to ask you, can you give me a specific example of maybe a painful lesson, but it turned out to be valuable?
So here's a great one is in team leadership. And I, by nature, am not a very great leader of people. So I have to employ people around me who are really, really good at leading teams. I am very much a visionary when it comes to the business. I'm very, very interested in that side of it. But the moment that it gets going, it gains traction, it starts to operate, I don't really want to run it. I don't feel like I'm great at managing people in certain roles and so forth. So that becomes very challenging, I think, for teams, because they're just like, dude, like this guy, and so one of the things that happened last year was I had a very, very integral member of our team who had a very, very high position in the company. And I believed that the next best thing for her and the company selfishly was to move her into an official executive role. Now, this is somebody who's over in the Philippines. And I want to make her a legitimate executive who has equity in the company, who all of these things. And I'm pushing that and I'm forcing that, and there's resistance. And I'm like, why are you not just wanting this? And so I pushed so hard and didn't manage that relationship well enough to understand that was not a good fit. That was not where she wanted to go, nor did her skill set truly allow her to even go there. So I ended up actually ruining that. She left the company in a glorified fire. We were devastated as a business because she kind of was a gel. And there were so many things that kind of just fell apart when she left. And I realized that was my fault. I didn't manage that relationship well and understand her needs and her desires and her goals. And if I were to truly think back, it's like, I never even asked. I never truly asked, with open heart and like letting her be who she needed to be. That was probably one of my biggest business failures of the past 4 or 5 years that I think probably that will make me an enormous amount of money in the future, understanding how to more effectively lead people in their teams and so forth.
Sure,
So that was a
sure.
huge lesson. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thanks so much for sharing that. So, as you mentioned, you're kind of like the visionary when it comes to companies, but then once the ball gets rolling, you kind of like to distance yourself. What does a typical day look like for you with everything you have going on?
Let's see. Right now, okay. So today's probably a typical day, right? I had 2 podcast interviews today. Because we're kind of on this roll, we're starting to use this. I'm never going to create content. My team's kind of figured that out. So they're like, hey, we need to get you on a bunch of podcasts so we have content to use so that we can use that to then grow businesses and so forth. So I'm like, all right, I can do podcast interviews. That's fun. I like that. I like meeting people and figuring out like, what does Rise 25 do? I want to go dig in and find out.
Mm-hmm.
So my day today, we wake up, my wife and I sit out on our back patio and stare at the mountains, have good conversations. Our dogs are running around, our chickens are out. Like then the kids kind of slowly wake up and we're just kind of hanging out as a family. Then it's like, okay, let me go figure out what's going on in my world and in business. And so I come into my office and I go, okay, look at Slack and figure out what my team's got going on. What are you guys working on today? Then I kind of figure out where people are. If there's any, drastic need where somebody needs me, I address that. And then if I have a podcast interview or something, that's what I do. I've got some rental real estate that we're doing some construction on. So I might swing over and check in on that today. Just kind of see what's going on. We're going to the park later with my kids. And then I'll probably ride my side-by-side up into the mountains today and just hang out. I mean, that's kind of my day.
Nice. Very nice. How can people find out more about everything you have going on?
Oh man, Joe, I mean, if they want to send me an email and ask, joe@joerare.com. You can go to joerare.com or, a couple of the companies, obviously visitormatch.com is brand new. We're just making that an official business and launching it. But we've already got, I don't know, what do we at 40, 50 clients already. So it's a real business that's running, making great money. Level9virtual.com, level9virtual.com. I mean, that's where you can kind of see the majority of what we're up to.
Mm-hmm.
For most small businesses, Level 9 Virtual is a huge value add. There's just, virtual assistant services is remarkable. It's the entire operation of everything that I do is run by my team in the Philippines. And so then we service hundreds and hundreds of clients around the world, and virtual assistant services is going to continue to grow. It's going to be something that every business is using in some scale, some capacity. And so it's exciting. It's a fun time right now.
So last question for you, you have 4 kind of official businesses that we talked about. You've got another one.
Yeah.
You've got another one that you just talked about, and you keep referencing your team. Do you have one team for everything, or does each separate one have a team?
So here's the cool part. And this is the business model that I kind of referred to in the beginning when I relaunched my agency and we kind of figured out what does the business take to operate and actually grow the way we wanted to. Then we did it again with the virtual assistant business and it worked. And I was like, hold on, we can do this with multiple companies. Then we did it with another one. And I said, okay, what's really, really interesting is you can have these businesses. So for example, we have a virtual assistant services company. We have a marketing agency. We have a SaaS company. Mm-hmm. We have another digital kind of marketing company. We have a data supplier company. And then the other one that I didn't talk about is we have a truck dispatching company. I know, weird. But what's interesting is that those are all somewhat similar but different. But the back end of the business, the actual functionality on how everybody operates, mm-hmm. the systems they use, the communication strategies they use, how they handle fulfillment, how teams are led, managed, and how everything is finances and HR, they're all identical. So I can pick somebody who, let's say somebody's working in Visitor Match right now. I can pick them up in their role, whatever their role is. I can move them into another business, drop them into that same role. They do the exact same thing in the back end of that business. Identical. Some of the verbiage might be different. Some of the actual outputs that we're trying to create might be different, but their responsibilities are almost identical across each business. So we have a core team of, I think there's 24 of us now, and everybody's in their roles within each of the companies that they operate. Some are in one, some work in multiple. And so that's kind of how we do it. But we know that if somebody's sick over here, we could pick somebody else up and put them in that spot. Okay. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds great. Do you host your own podcast, or are you just a guest enough? You have some very good looking equipment there.
Well, yeah. So I was gonna launch a podcast. I keep saying I'm gonna launch a podcast, and I just literally haven't done it. And I think part of it comes down to the fact that, like, I won't make the time to do it. If I'm obligated to somebody else like you, I don't have a problem sitting down. Let's do this over, whatever period of time. And I'm all for it. I haven't put myself in the position yet to say, okay, well, now we're going to build our own thing. I have podcast concepts. I've interviewed a few people in some other ones, and then we never even launched them, but it's coming. I promise. Something's coming.
Cool. Well, yeah. When we get off this recording, I'll fill you in on a couple benefits of Rise 25.
Right on. Yeah, I know. I heard that in the beginning. I was like, hold on, we got to talk.
That'd be great. Hey, Joe, it's been great to talk to you. Your story is very interesting, amazing, and congratulations on all your success. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.